Hello, good evening everyone. This is Dr. Veena Venkatesh from Ajanta Pharma Limited, working as General Manager and taking care of Medical Services Department. On the behalf of Ajanta, I welcome each and everyone for this scientific session. Today's topic would be trabeculectomy journey. We have with us very eminent speaker and Dr. Kirti Singh. I have a privilege of introducing her to the audience. Dr. Kirti Singh, her qualification is MD, DNB, FRCS, Diploma in Hospital Management, Foundation of Advanced International Medical Education and Research Fellow. Currently, she is the Director, Professor, Department of Ophthalmology, Glaucoma Division, Guru Nanak Eye Center, Maulana Azad Medical College. Her experience goes that she is a graduate of Lady Hardinge Medical College, post-graduation from the AIMS, PG Diploma in Hospital Management, National Institute of Health and Family Welfare, New Delhi. She's been trained in glaucoma from Wills Eye Hospital, USA in 1996, Commonwealth Fellow at Moorfield Eye Hospital, London in 2000, and she's been the gold medalist in her studies during her course of studies. She is the recipient of WHO Fellowship in 2009. She's been the faculty member of Maulana Azad Medical College more than 2 decades since 23 years. She's been the member of Clinical Epidemiological Unit at Maulana Azad Medical College, faculty member, Department of Occupational and Environmental Health Unit of Maulana Azad Medical College, faculty of Microsurgical Skill Training Center in MMSC since 2003. She has conducted many CMEs and instruction courses at state, national and international level, delivered over 500 educational lectures at various CMEs at local, state and international level meets. She's published and authored 3 textbooks in contact lens and glaucoma, co-authored 12 books and have 55 indexed and over 75 peer-reviewed publications. She has delivered over 800 educational lectures at various CME at local, state and international levels. She's authored a volume of English poetry. This is something, it's different from our curriculum, but and contributed to Sahitya Kala Academy newsletter. She's been nominated TroSoft of MA/MC in 2018, in which capacity initiated green environment drive de-addiction activities with local administration and municipality. There are several awards to her credit. Commonwealth Fellowship 1999 to 2000, Moorfield Hospital, London, WHO Fellowship in September 2009 in New Vision Rehabilitation, Arvind Eye Hospital, Madurai, various awards at Delhi Ophthalmic Society and Women Ophthalmic Society, B.N. Khanna Oration, Delhi Ophthalmic Society 2019, gold medal, Indian Refractory Surgery Society of India 2019. With this brief introduction, I would request Madam to take over today's proceedings. Ma'am, please, I'll hand over the proceedings to you. Followed by, we will have a question and answer session, which will be questions I'll be asking you so that it will facilitate for you to give the response. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Veena, for that very exhaustive introduction. It's a privilege to be here, and I'm thankful to Ajanta Pharma Limited for giving me the opportunity in these trying times to continue teaching, which is our passion and which is also our job. So the topic today is trabeculectomy journey, managing bleb misbehavior. Now, all of you have joined us. Glaucoma is the second commonest surgery after cataract. And in Indian vernacular language, Safed Motia and Kala Motia are the two terms used to describe cataract and glaucoma. However, cataract surgeons, when they finish with the surgery and the next post-op day, first post-op day, it's a wow factor. Patient is happy, doctor is happy, and the story almost always ends there. Of course, you have to follow up the patient for a month, but then that's it. However, in a trabeculectomy, it is never a wow factor. The wow factor comes much later, and only the wow factor which comes is that the patient retains whatever vision he or she came to you with. They never gain more vision. So this counseling has to be done for the patient before you undertake a trab. That vision will not be gained, but whatever is there will remain with them. So when you do a successful trabectomy, you may do a fantastic job, but the battle is only one. The war still always lingers because the bleb has a very meandering journey, like this road in the hills. It just meanders, and you have to take care of the bleb survival at each time. And that early intervention is important. Therefore, a trab patient is yours for life. A cataract patient never is. The only mantra to ensure bleb survival is constant monitoring and constant vigilance. For the Harry Potter fans like I am, if you remember Moody, it's constant vigilance, and only then you can manage to have a trab which is functional throughout the life of the patient. So what are the milestones in a bleb journey which will determine its prognosis? So I have linked these milestones to how you clear an exam. So the first 3 days, you will come to know whether you're going to fail or pass. The clues in bleb's journey is bleb morphology and the AC depth. Bleb morphology, if it's a shallow height with high IOP, it is invariably due to tight suturing. If it is a low IOP, with a shallow height, then in that case you can be looking at a bleb leak. If the AC is shallow with a high IOP, the eye could be blocked, or there could be an aqueous misdirection or malignant glaucoma happening. You can't miss that malignant glaucoma because the IOP will be very high. However, if you have a shallow AC with a low pressure, it could be an overfiltering bleb, or it could be a choroidal detachment. So this was for the AC shallow. AC is deep and the IOP is high. You could have left too much viscoelastic in the AC during your surgery, or the styrostomy could be blocked, or your sutures could be tight. So this is the first 3 days. So you have to look at the bleb morphology and the AC depth. First week, you will come to know whether the bleb is going to pass with distinction or not. Again, the clues with you are the bleb morphology and the AC depth. If the bleb is becoming shallow or localized, however, it is forming with massage, bleb massage, that means your suture is tight. Very, very rarely it could be early fibrosis. Mostly it is that the suturing is tight. If the AC is shallow with the IOP high, it could again be aqueous misdirection. If the IOP is low, it could be a choroidal or the bleb leak. AC is deep with high IOP, it could be fibrosis or a blocked styrostomy. First fortnight, you'll come to know whether the bleb is going to come up with honors. Again, if it is a shallow or a localizing bleb and the IOP may or may not be high, if it is localizing, then you remove the releasables early. Okay. If the AC is shallow with IOP high, again, don't remember aqueous misdirection can happen at any stage. And aqueous misdirection is much more common with angle closure glaucomas and in patients in which you have operated with a high IOP, just control the IOP and operate it. Therefore, it is always better to operate on a quiet eye to prevent this. Deep AC, IOP rising, the first fortnight, think of a flailing bleb, and that subcongenital fibrosis is the most common cause. Till the first month, if the bleb is good, IOP is good, AC is good, you are going to have a lifetime of a good bleb for the patient. Again, here, look at the bleb morphology, same as the first month, first fortnight. If it is shallowing or localizing, it could be a Tenon cyst happening, or it could be early fibrosis. Here, releasables at the end or at the time of 1 month may not be that effective because fibrosis already has started. However, if you are having releasables still inside, remove it. But the trick here is to do increased massage and increase the steroid use. If the IOPs increase with the shallow AC, Same thing, aqueous misdirection, lens damage, or lens could be intumescent at this stage. And if the IOP is increasing, the AC is deep, and the bleb morphology is also showing you that it's a failing bleb, that becomes a subconjunctival fibrosis. So I'm sure till now I have confused you totally, because this is as per textbook what you see in the first month. So now I will unravel the confusion and show you one by one all these topics. First one is a bleb leak. So what happens in a bleb leak? You'll have a shallow bleb, you have a shallow AC, and your IOP will be low. So everything is shallow, bleb is shallow, AC is shallow, and the IOP is low. And especially if you have used phytomycin, the risk of bleb leak is much high. And this bleb leak can happen anytime in the first 10 years, even later, but maximum risk is in the first 5 years. So since we are talking in the immediate post-op period, if you see a bleb leak, first of all, you try to do conservative management. You do a pad bandage and you use aqueous suppressants, okay? Because you don't want the aqueous to keep coming and keeping the bleb open and the aqueous to keep leaking out. You want to stop that. Second is you do a torpedo bandage. This is a very, very useful technique, and I'll be just showing it to you how to do it. If this also doesn't work, then the third step is resuturing or a tissue glue if you have that available. Fourth is an amniotic membrane resurfacing. And last, if none of these work, this is in sequence, then do a patch graft or a Momini's repair. Most often these patients who require a Momini's repair or patch graft come to you very late, some years after surgery. So these are the pictures of a bleb leak. Here, fluorescein is a big help, and Siedel's test will tell you where exactly the bleb leak is. As you can see here, that rivulet of blue in the fluorescent green is showing you the bleb leak is here. Okay. This is a bleb leak patient. You can see the Descemet's fold, IOP is low, AC is shallow. And what we did, we just did a torpedo bandage. In a torpedo bandage, you just make a bolster of cotton and then put another iPad with the patient looking down. Okay, eyes closed, not eyes closed, looking down, put that bolster and put that iPad and just keep it patched for 24 hours. Open, if you need to repeat it, put drops in the eye and repeat the torpedo bandage for 24 hours again. And this was a patient with torpedo bandage whom we could just form the AC and the bleb leak, the mild leak resolved. This is a video of showing a patient who had a very high bleb on day 1. However, this patient kept rubbing his eyes and this bleb leak happened, and on the third day 3, this was a shallow bleb and a shallow chamber. This video is showing you how the bleb was resutured. Okay, so you cut the conjunctiva where it is leaking, you resuture, and this is the torpedo bandage being placed. The same patient actually had a wound dehiscence. It was very often, remember, these patients had been on multiple anti-glaucoma medications for many years, and their conjunctiva is not treatment naive. So this conjunctiva is very slow to heal, and this conjunctiva does give way, and bleb leaks or bleb sweating happens quite commonly in patients who are on multiple anti-glaucoma medications. So this patient had a bleb dehiscence again despite the suturing. And then we had to use the third option, which was resurfacing with an amniotic membrane. And this amniotic membrane was placed, and quilting sutures were used with the amniotic through the amniotic membrane full thickness with the conjunctiva. And then pad bandage for 24 hours, opened, put the drops, checked out, clear eye, and then again did a pad bandage for 3 to 4 days. And this is how the amniotic membrane took up and the bleb sealed. So till now we've covered bleb leak. First option was conservative. You just put a torpedo bandage. Second option is you can do the suturing. And third option is you can do a fibrin glue or a tissue glue at the point which is leaking. Invariably, this conjunctiva is friable. So in my personal experience, tissue glue alone doesn't work. You have to have a suture along with it. Obviously, tissue glue helps. Sometimes you just incite the fibrous growth into the bleb, and you use autologous serum. Autologous serum, you withdraw 10 ml serum from the patient, centrifuge it. The serum which comes out, put 1 to 2 drops of injectable gentamicin, keep it in the refrigerator, and use those drops 1 hourly on the patient. This serum cannot be used for more than 2 days, so you have to retake the blood and reform the serum after 48 hours. So this is a patient in which we used the serum, and this is a very large bleb leak because of the dehiscence of the conjunctiva. Must have been a lot of mitomycin must have been used in this bleb. And this patient, when they came to us, he required a Momini's repair. So a clip of what Momini's repair is. This was this leaking cicatrix. You make a conjunctival flap around, and then distal to the bleb, you raise a half thickness scleral flap and invert the flap. So this sclera has been taken from distal side and half thickness, and it is inverted onto the leaking bleb. Okay, and then you suture it. And here we will be using, after the suturing, be very careful at this step because you can perforate the thin area. So a mattress suture and then amniotic membrane, which we use as antifibrotic and as a surface modifying agent, and then you suture, close the bleb. So these were the steps on how to control a leaking bleb. How can you prevent it? Prevention always is better. So to prevent this leaking bleb, you always use a bleb anchoring suture. At the end of surgery, do a bleb titration, which means you from the side port inject balanced salt solution or saline and watch the bleb forming. If there's any leak on table, suture it then and there so that you prevent a bleb leak in the post-op period. This is the video of how conjunctival anchoring sutures are done for a phonic space flap. These are horizontal mattress sutures. You can bury the knot inside or you can bury the knot outside. Cut the knot flush, and you remove this in the post-op period within the first 3 weeks. And this is bleb titration happening, and you can see that the bleb is, the wound is, there's integrity of the wound is not, it's a clean bleb, so it's not a leaking bleb here. If you look up the CME series of AIOS, all this is given in the CME which we had published in the number 14 series. So anybody who wants to check this out can check it. This was published in 2007. So next topic is overfiltering bleb. Again, conservative first. Use cycloplegics, relax the ciliary body with atropine. In our center, we use midricaine very often. Midricaine injection is given subconjunctively. You mix 0.2 ml of adrenaline, non-preserved adrenaline, 0.2 ml of atropine, and 0.2 ml of xylocaine, and you inject that subconjunctively. That's called as midricaine. Again, if this doesn't work, you use torpedo bandage just as you use for a leaking bleb. Reduce the frequency of steroids here because you are permitting subconj fibrosis to happen and cause this bleb to flatten out. Very rarely you might find that the lens is displaced. So rule out lens displacement before doing all these things because lens displacement would require a different protocol. Do not remove the releasable sutures till beyond 4 to 6 weeks. Delay that. And that is where the releasable sutures give you a security blanket. If you release it fast, the IOP will become low. If you release it late, the fibrosis has already intervened. So this the filtration will not be achieved. If your IOP is low, there is hypotenuse maculopathy developing with Descemet's folds or bleb dysesthesia. Bleb dysesthesia is a bleb which is so much overfiltering or deranging the ocular surface which is causing discomfort to the patient due to tear film disruption. In these cases, you will intervene by compression sutures, autologous serum, or SF6 gas. So, to reiterate, the first thing for overfiltering bleb is cycloplegics, maybe mitraquine, usually atropine suffices, torpedo bandage. Ensure that rapid fibrosis happens by reducing the frequency of steroid use and delaying removal of releasable sutures. And intervention only required when there are signs of problems, which is macula is problematic by hypotonous maculopathy, Descemet's force, or bleb dysthesias. So this is an overfiltering bleb with a shallow AC, and the IOP is invariably low. This is how the torpedo bandage is used for an overfiltering bleb. Second one is the autologous serum or the compression sutures. This was a cystic bleb, avascular bleb, and an overfiltering bleb. So we did autologous serum injection for this patient. How you do that is you withdraw blood. You can see a bleb leak here. Okay. So when you see this bleb leak happening, you have to seal this area now. Okay. So this was a thinned out bleb which leaked in addition to being overfiltering. So here I have used compression sutures, which is nothing but Tenno sutures, 2 to 3 compression sutures, full thickness. You just compress the bleb and leave them in situ for at least a month. So I'm using again amniotic membrane as a cover, quilting it with the subconjunctival tissue. And then this patient will be bandaged. You may also require a conjunctival autograft from the same eye or the other eye if this doesn't work. Okay. So this is the patient with conjunctival with compression sutures and amniotic membrane on day 1. It's another patient with compression sutures. To complete what I was saying about autologous serum, you withdraw the blood from the antecubital vein of the patient, change the needle, do not change the syringe, and inject with a fresh 26 gauge needle immediately before the blood has time to clot. So somebody withdraws for you and gives you the syringe, and you inject it, changing the needle. The fourth option is when you have an overfiltering bleb and you have a shallow AC, you can inject SF6. Okay, keeping in mind that moment you inject SF6, the IOP will increase for at least 1 week, and you would need anti-glaucoma medications, usually acetazolamide systemic, to keep the IOP under control. As I said before, this was a couple of cases which we had seen with an overfiltering bleb, and the lens had subluxated in these patients, and until we removed the lens and put an IUL with SF suturing, this bleb did not revive. Rarely your releasable suture can have broken, and this is very visible. So in that case, you have to enter and you have to do the bleb suturing. You have to do the steel suturing again for this overfiltering bleb. This was the second topic of overfiltering bleb. The third bleb misbehavior, which you see very, very frequently, is the sick bleb or the failing bleb or the impending failure. So what are the signs in this? The bleb height reduces. IOP may be high, may be normal, may be low. So why am I saying this? We'll come to this. Failure is 2 different types. The commonest cause of failure is external, which is subconjunctival fibrosis. Okay, so these are signs of subconj fibrosis happening, and the bleb is becoming shallow. Less common, but still present, is something which is a blocked internal ostium. The usual cause is iris, blood, fibrin, or vitreous. This is called as internal closure. So one is external closure and one is internal closure. So please remember, whenever you see a bleb, failing bleb, rule out internal closure by doing a gonioscopy and checking out whether the iris is incarcerated in the sclerostomy. Because if this is the cause, your treatment of bleb fibrosis by other means will not work till you remove this. So how do you revive the bleb? I would put an analogy of the CPR, where you have the compression, airway, and breathing technology to a technique. If it is early, just rule out an internal block by gonioscopy and do a bleb massage. A very simple and elegant way of reforming a failing bleb. So this is the bleb massage, and this you explain to the patient to do it 3 to 4 times a day in front of the mirror with his own hand. Okay, and the bleb is forming. So as I said, if you remember the second slide that I had shown you, if the bleb is forming with this, it means your sutures are tight. However, you don't want to release the sutures so fast, otherwise you'll have an overfiltering bleb. So you do bleb massage, increase the steroids, and then you'll release the releasable sutures in the next week, which is 7 to 10 days after the surgery. Please remember, for a failing bleb, we always are told that the IOP is rising. This I've learned the hard way. Please do not wait for the IOP to rise. Flattening of the bleb alone is sufficient clue to tell you that this bleb is failing. If you wait for the IOP to rise, you'll be too late. Why? Because in the initial first few weeks, the IOP will not rise so fast unless and until it's a malignant glaucoma or it is a pupil block glaucoma happening with the PI being blocked. Because when you do a trabeculectomy, you are injuring ciliary body a little bit. So ciliary body does go into shock. There can be inadvertent associated cyclodialysis, and there is very often a minimal subclinical choroidal effusion. So because of these three aspects, IOP may not rise in the initial weeks, and the bleb may still be failing. So if you intervene at the sign of the morphology of the bleb being altered without the IOP sign being there, you will have treated the bleb in time. Okay, so this is the CPR, in which what you do next is, if you have a failing bleb, your bleb morphology is localizing, you will do the releasable sutures. You will remove the releasable sutures. Okay, so this releasable suture, I use the Wilson technique of releasable suture. I have released the suture on the slit lamp in the OPD with a 26 gauge needle and a forceps, suture tying forceps, and the suture comes out. So this bleb was localizing, and I felt this bleb was not that good, so I released the suture early. Now you can ask me, suture release is releasable sutures are meant to be released? Yes, definitely. But releasable sutures, and let me just state that you give normally 2 releasable sutures. You will leave the releasable sutures in position even for a month if you don't require to remove them, because they are your safety net. In case your bleb is failing, the morphology is low, and the IOP may or may not be rising, you will release the sutures fast. If the bleb is overfiltering, you will not remove the releasable sutures at all. You will leave it for a month. Or otherwise, in the normal journey of a bleb which is doing well and the IOP is fine, the bleb is moderately okay, you will release the sutures releasable. The first suture removed by first week and the second by second week. However, there's a caveat to that. If you have used mitomycin C, you may remove the sutures 3 to 4 days later, like the first one at 10 days and the second one at 3 weeks. Even then, the effect will come. If you remove the releasable sutures after a month, the effect which releasable sutures will not happen because fibrosis has already happened. So releasable suture and sequential release. Never release both the releasables together. Please give a gap of at least 5 to 7 days between the release of 2 sutures. How will you know that this bleb is failing? On the slit lamp, sitting on the slit lamp, it may be a very subjective way of thinking that this bleb is failing. So what we do in our patients is we do the IBAGS classification for the blebs at each follow-up. So when you are doing the IBAGS, looking at the height, the extent, the vascularity, and the Seidel sign, or the HEVS, height, extent, vascularity, and Seidels, and grade it, you will know, supposing the bleb initially in the first post-op day was H3, and the next post-op date becomes H2 and then H1, you know that this bleb is going into failure. Same with extent. If the extent starts reducing, you know that this bleb can go into failure and you need to intervene early. So these give you an objective measure of how the bleb is behaving, and they should be mentioned at each follow-up visit. The other signs other than the bleb morphology, localizing of the bleb and the IOP, are these: avascular blebs, tenon cyst forming, walling off of the bleb, okay, the ring of steel as Dr. Penkhaw says, reduction in the height or the extent, as I was saying. In the you will check by the Indiana bleb classification or any classification you want to check it from with. Increasing vascularity. Please look at these vessels which are there on the bleb. Tortuosity, corkscrewing of the vessels, or even straightening of the vessels. These are all signs that there is subconch fibrosis happening. And the last sign also will be that the bleb motility with the swab stick will be less. It will become less motile. So this is sign of an impending failure, and you must immediately intervene. If it is early enough, you will do steroids. You will increase the steroid level. You will do the releasable suture release. You will do a bleb massage. If it is late, we'll come to what we'll do. Again, just showing you this picture. With these signs of bleb failure, IOP may not be increased. It may be, it may not be. So do not wait for IOP increase when you have these signs of bleb failure before you intervene. Please remember, a trabeculectomy is not a perfect surgery. Unlike cataract, where we are almost having a perfect surgery, trabeculectomy is not a perfect surgery. There is 60% success decrease of trabeculectomy over a 5-year period, and subconch fibrosis is the commonest culprit. This propensity for failure is much more in pigmented races, and therefore, since in India we are brown race, it is pretty high in our country. This technique, which we have been doing in our center the last 15 years, is a very simple way of preventing bleb failure, and that's called as needling. This attempts to revive the failing blebs by lysing the fibrosis. Success rate in our center is almost 82%, with most of the patients being followed up for more than 6 months. And IOP reduction has been as high as 27 to 29 millimeters of mercury, 27%. Okay, literature reports even much more percentage reduction. However, we only found around 29%, 27% reduction, but we could revive 82% of our blebs. So let's see what this needling technique is, which will revive these blebs. Type of needling. The needling also has to be of 2 types. Again, it will depend on the type of bleb, a type of blockage. Internal blockage, if you remember this slide I showed you, if the sclerostomy is blocked by iris tissue or vitreous or IOL haptic or blood clot, commonest one is iris tissue, then your treatment will be different. And the needling which we do, which we call it in our center, is internal revision. If it is external block, which is due to the subconch fibrosis, then as I said before, digital massage, laser suture lysis if you have that facility, or releasable suture removal, frequent steroids, and bleb needling. I always do needling with antimetabolites, 5-FU or mitomycin. In my center, I don't have anti-VEGF. Otherwise, you can use that also. So let's come to needling in detail. When you do needling, the best effect is if you do it in the first 6 to 8 weeks. Otherwise, later you do it, less the effect. In these patients, even more than 1 year post surgery, more than 1 year post surgery, a trial of bleb needling is warranted. And in our series, we could revive these blebs in 82% cases. As I said, most of these patients had come to us after 2 years of surgery. It's an extraocular procedure. However, we prefer to do it in the operating room. It has been described to be done on the slit lamp also. You do under topical anesthesia. Peribulbar anesthesia is used if I am combining it with internal revision. I use a 26 gauge needle. Textbooks say you use a 30 gauge needle. Our 30 gauge needle is too fragile and it bends very much. So I prefer a 26 gauge needle, and I always use 5-FU or mitomycin C. So this is the video of how needling is done. So under topical anesthesia, you have entered away from the bleb, and by jackhammer motions or cutting motions, keeping the needle visible, you just cut these subconch bands. There's a gritty feel which comes, and very often there'll be a blood coming out here, because when the blood vessels break, there'll be an exudation of blood. And you are injecting 5-FU or mitomycin C. At the end, I put a blob of viscoelastic that will prevent the exudation of the 5-FU or the mitomycin which I have injected. How do you know if your needling has worked? Needling will, if the immediate post-op period your IOP comes down to less than 10, it's definitely a success. But do not be disheartened if it doesn't come down immediately. It can take up to 3 to 4 days. So the next visit you should ask the patient to follow up is after 3 to 4 days, and then check the pressure. Till that time, do not be in too much of a haste to stop the anti-glaucoma medications. Many of these drugs with bleb failure are on AGMs. So continue the AGMs when you've done the needling. Use the steroids and only stop these AGMs in the first post-op week, first-op visit, when you see that the IOP is coming down and the bleb morphology is much better. The second thing in the needling, the second type of needling was when you have an internal closure of the sclerostomy. As I said, usually it's iris tissue, and if you see the PI will be blocked, and on the gonioscopy you can actually see the sclerostomy being closed. This PI is updrawn, so this iris tissue is blocking it, or the PI can be blocked. So just to show you this visual, please remember, for a bleb failure, always do a gonioscopy. Like a Heimlich's maneuver, the iris tissue has to be removed from the sclerostomy site, and this is the way to do it. Do a paracentesis. Inject viscoelastic in the anterior chamber, and with a simple rod instrument, you just enter the trabeculectomy area and unplug the sclerostomy, and the iris tissue which is blocking that area comes out, and the PI becomes visible again. At the end, you will reform the chamber. Please remember, whenever you are sorry, I just have to so let me pause here. When you finish the internal revision, please remember this patient, any patient who has a bleb failure due to internal ostium closure, the aqueous hasn't come into the subconjunctival space because this ostium was closed. Therefore, subconch fibrosis also has happened, because flowing aqueous is the best antifibrotic. So if the aqueous was dammed up, it has not come up into the subconjunctival space for many months, subconch fibrosis has supervened. Therefore, if you do internal revision, you have to do a subconjunctival tissue fibrosis removal by an external needling for the success. So internal revision has to be always combined with external needling. So there's another needling happening. Remember, the visibility of the needle tip is important. Otherwise, you can land up perforating the sclera or perforating the conjunctiva. You can see it is taking me some effort to cut the fibrotic bands. and you can see the bleeding, that small bleeding happening because the fibrovascular band has been cut. This was a very angry bleb, and the PI was totally blocked. This was a pseudophakic glaucoma patient, and I had to make 2 entries at different, remove the iris tissue. So you can see that the PI, I'm trying to open out the PI. And you can see that the pupil is forming again, and the iris tissue is coming out. So a lot of fibrosis has happened here. It's a very simple procedure, doesn't cause any damage to the cornea. The only complication I've had once is a corneal detachment, and mostly the very mild complication of hyphema happens, and this hyphema resolves with time. So again, for this patient, I'm combining this procedure with the external needling. And this is the post-op. This is the patient on the first post-op day, and this is the patient in which the bleb had revived. This is another technique in which you will bend the needle. This is a very simple instrument. Like you can use a Sinskey hook also. Otherwise, I have this straight rod instrument. It has just unplugged the sclerostomy site. The iris has come out. PI is visible. Okay, viscoelastomer injector is removed. The entry point is hydrated, and needling is done subconjunctivally. In this patient, I had used mitomycin C. Lately, I have shifted from 5-FU to mitomycin C. And to prevent toxicity of mitomycin C, do plug the entry with viscoelastic and wash thoroughly. Post-op period, you just give cycloplegics. You don't give cycloplegics. You just give steroids for 7 to 10 days. You do not give cycloplegics because you don't want the iris to the pupil to dilate. These are the patients in which it is the post-op gonioscopy, and you can see that the ostium is opened. So just sharing 2 case vignettes of these patients. This is a 50-year-old patient with PACG in the left eye. He was operated for TRAP 16 months ago. This patient completed 12 months of follow-up post-needling, and this is the pre-revision bleb and the post-revision bleb. And you can see that the bleb actually revived and expanded, and this patient is doing well. It's a one year follow-up, and the IOP before revision was 24, and after revision it is 14, and she is not on any anti-glaucoma medication. Another patient, a 30-year-old, 26 months ago, and this patient also has a more than a year follow-up. This is the pre-bleb. See the vessels in Sturge-Weber. And post-needling, this was a mitomycin needling, a little large bleb, little avascular in areas, otherwise a very functional bleb. So these were 2 case vignettes in which I've shared that actually this needling works. The complications are self-limiting, usually subconj hemorrhage. It is seen in more than 20% of our patients, and this resolves within some time. No vision drop or no hypotony was noted, and no cataract position in the 57% of our series which we had. Almost more than 57% were phakic eyes, and none of them had any cataract progression or any endothelium damage at maximum follow-up of 1 year in this series of ours. Post-operative regimen, you give topical antibiotic steroids, QID for usually 2 to 3 weeks is sufficient. If you find the fibrosis is more, you can use for 3 to 4 weeks. Start the bleb massage 3rd day onwards. Timing, you can do a needling anytime. From 3 months to 7 years is the literature report. In our center, we have done it at 1 month also and at 10 years also. Even if it doesn't work, there is absolutely no harm in trying this, because the next alternative is to do a revision of the bleb. You can repeat needling 2 to 3 times. And as I said, success rate is almost 82% in our series. This is another patient of needling of the bleb and the sequential bleb after needling. And this was confirmed by the anti-segment OCT, which showed that the microcystic spaces increase after needling in this revived bleb. So therefore, needle-induced bleb resuscitation is a viable, safe procedure worth a trial, and even more than one trial to increase filter longevity. Internal revision, which we have described in our center, adjuvant revives the bleb in cases where there is a sclerostomy closure. The last method in the CPR is to give a shock. So in those patients in which none of these procedures of needling works, you have to do a repeat trabeculectomy, and most of the older trabeculectomy surgeons are pessimist. We know that our trab will fail at some time. So in younger patients, you expect a longer life, you always do the trabeculectomy on the nasal side, okay, because you leave the temporal side, spare the temporal side for a second trab. This was a patient in which repeat trab was required. This is a pseudophakic glaucoma patient. This was the trab site. We can see the previous trab site is here. So I've gone temporal. In this patient, because it was an IUL which was decentered, I put an AC maintainer to prevent collapse on the chamber during the trabeculectomy procedure. Okay, and this is a patient in which we did a repeat surgery, and we use amniotic membrane very frequently in our center as an antifibrotic. And this conjunctival suturing technique is a new one which we have described. It is called as a conjunctival fill incision. We do not do a limbal based or a fornix based. We do this incision in which 1.5 to 2 millimeter away from the limbus, we cut the conjunctiva in a arc fashion and suture that. So that's completion of my lecture on bleb misbehaviors. We've covered leaking blebs, overfiltering blebs, and blebs with impending failure.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, ma'am. There are questions.
Yeah, sure.
Dr. Rita Damankar, she has asked multiple questions, ma'am.
Yes, Rita.
I'll just read out. How often would you repeat antimitotic injections subconjunctivally?
Okay. Dr. Rita, as I think this was there in that slide, it can be repeated more than 3 to 6 times. However, in my series, I do not go beyond 3 times. Okay, because if it has to work, it will work in the first 2 times. So max I've gone up is 3 times. If till 3 times it doesn't work, then you go for a repeat trap. Having said that, if your first injection was with 5-FU, then you should repeat it more with mitomycin C, because mitomycin C is a stronger antifibrotic than 5-FU, so that's a better one.
Another question she has asked. Yeah. Yes. Another question she has asked. Suggestion you can deal with the subconjunctival fibrosis through the internal ostium itself using a long spatula with sharp edge at the tip. So another external needling is not required.
I think I've answered this question previously itself, because when you are doing this internal revision, as she was showing this spatula using, this is what I've used. Is this visible? Is this audio visible? Is this video visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is the long straight rod, I call it. That's the name of this instrument. I've used this to open out the internal blockage. This alone will not suffice, because as I said, if the aqueous hasn't come in the subconch space for a long time, subconch fibrosis invariably has supervened. So you have to combine this with the external needling.
Ma'am, one more question she has asked. What about the Viper Shield syndrome with releasable sutures? Is there a way to prevent that?
Okay, so the releasable sutures, which I think I did, very, very important questions. I'll just come to that. Yeah, so let's say this is the releasable suture here. If you can see the, if you can see this video, these were two releasable sutures which I had. One was broken. In this one, in the Wilson technique, there is no chance of windshield viper syndrome. In the Kolker modification of Cohen-Osher technique, in that you had that long suture which was there, and that also the Kolker modification has put that suture inside the cornea. If you just leave that small bit, it never causes windshield viper. And for this technique, Richard Wilson's technique of releasable suture which I use, these suture knots are buried. They are buried in the subconch space here, and sometimes even if they're not buried, they are left very short, so they do not cause a releasable. They do not cause a windshield viper syndrome.
And another question she has asked, Dr. Rita Damankar again.
Yes.
Would you rather massage the bleb at the 12 o'clock position pole to prevent the iris prolapse from the wound?
Yes, I have seen many people do the bleb massage from the superior position. I'll just show that. Thanks for asking these questions, Rita.
Ma'am, there is a question from Dr. Sukanya Mitra. What concentration do you...
Yeah, just a minute. Let me finish that bleb massage.
Okay. Sorry.
Where was that? Just let me come to the bleb, because there are two ways of doing bleb massage. The one which I have taught my residents is at 6 o'clock, because I find that's very good. And what she has asked is that does that bleb massage cause iris prolapse into the wound? It never does. And this technique of bleb massage, here it is. This technique of bleb massage, you can very easily tell the patient to perform at home. Okay, see here what we are doing is a 6 o'clock massage here. Okay, so this is your finger is at the 6 o'clock position. If you put the finger at 12 o'clock position, you cannot tell the patient to perform this massage at home, because patient can't see his eye. 6 o'clock one, the patient can see his eye, because from this slit he can see. Okay, so he can do this under the mirror. With the 12 o'clock one, he can't do. Second, the 12 o'clock massage is downward movement. Okay, and actually you want the aqueous to go up into the subconch space. So I have always taught this bleb massage, and this one works very well. And I have never had an iris go into the subconch space because of massage.
Okay, ma'am. Dr. Sukanya Mitra, what concentration do you inject during needling? What's the safety profile?
Okay, yeah, this I was expecting. I think this slide, if somebody is sharing, you use 0.5 ml, 0.5 ml of 5-FU in 10 milligram per 5 ml dilution. What you do is 5-FU, you have that, take 1 ml of it, add 4 ml of sterile water, and out of this you use 0.5 to 1 ml. Okay, so this becomes 5 milligram total. Whereas mitomycin C, you dilute in 10 ml of sterile water, withdraw 1 ml of this, add, then to this 1 ml you add 9 ml of water, and then take 0.1 and 0.5 of this. And toxicity, as I said, maximum toxicity I've had is sorry, side effects I've had is hyphema, which is self-limiting. One patient had coil detachment, and I've been doing needling, and all my residents have been doing needling for the last 15 years. So none of us had any SPK or corneal complications as reported by literature, because we use that small blob of visco at the end to seal the injection site, and we wash the area thoroughly. We have had no corneal complications, no DM detachments, no cataract progression in the phakic eyes. Hyphema is the only complication I've had, and that resolves. and subconch hemorrhage, and I don't think that's a complication. In fact, that's a evidence that blood vessels have been broken and the fibrovascular tissue bands have been broken. So there's a subconch hemorrhage is going to be there, which is going to take some 2 to 3 weeks to go away. So I would tell the patient that he may have a red eye afterwards.
Ma'am, a question from Dr. Sadanand. Would the subconjunctival amniotic membrane block the filtration?
The subconjunctival amniotic membrane, how will it block the filtration? So it is used over the scleral flap. Okay, I'll just paste that picture which I had. This is in fact, this study has been published in IGO where we used amniotic membrane. See this one, if so once you have sutured this sclera, okay, you put the 2 releasable sutures and 1 apical non-releasable. This is a triangular flap, so I've done it. Otherwise, in a rectangular flap, you have apical releasables and 2 side fixed sutures. I have trimmed the amniotic membrane and placed it in the subconch space over the conjunctiva. Okay, so this you can do this, or you can put Ologen implant like that. So there is no way they can block the ciliosity site because they are subconjunctival and over the sclera.
Yeah, madam. Dr. Rita Damankar, she has thanked you, madam, for a reply that's been given because she had asked multiple questions.
Pleasure.
And one more, her concern is that our probable aqueous misdirection can, however, also present with a low IOP. Hence, it is important to remember this. This may be just suggestion. That's what she wanted to say.
Yeah, actually, it can initially, but once the aqueous misdirection becomes established, the IOP is going to be high and the AC is going to be shallow. Yes, but initially it can masquerade. The AC depth is more important. It will be a very, very shallow AC in aqueous misdirection.
And ma'am, this may not be relevant, but still I just want to ask because our PMT wants to know any role of Rho kinase inhibitors, Rapasudil, in managing blebs?
Absolutely. In fact, I believe we are going to have that next session next week. And unfortunately, because this corona pandemic, we couldn't do it. In the failing bleb, okay, as I think I told you 2 important points, that any patient on anti-glaucoma drugs, which is called as a treated conjunctiva, vis-a-vis a treatment naive conjunctiva, these treated conjunctivas do not fare that well. That is why this was the basis of the CHOP versus drop policy, that do an early trap, because the patients on drugs do not do well with trap, because these blebs fail much more vis-a-vis patients who were not on anti-glaucoma drugs. However, Rho kinase inhibitors come with that interesting benefit that if you use them as an anti-glaucoma medication, they do not cause the fibrotic tendency as the other AGMs do, because they have an inherent anti-fibrotic or an anti-apoptotic property. Okay, so I in fact want to do the study where I'm going to use these Rho kinase inhibitors as AGMs on bleb which is failing. They will give rise to control of IOP as well as prevent the further fibrosis. And this study, in fact, has been done, published study, where they have done on human tenon fibroblast. They've used Rho kinase inhibitors in drop form, and they have shown that the HTF, human tenon fibroblast, differentiation into myofibroblast is reduced drastically with the use of Rho kinase inhibitors. So definitely, Rho kinase inhibitors will have a role in failing blebs and in having a better prognosis to trap. A very interesting study was that they have predicted the response of trabeculectomy to a ROCK effectiveness, which means that a ROCK inhibitor, if it was given and it was effective, these conjunctivas will do better with trap vis-a-vis the conjunctiva which were not responding to ROCK kinase inhibitors. The whole process depends on the fibroblast transdifferentiation into myofibroblast. So they do act on that aspect, and they would help.
Thank you very much for an excellent explanation given with the raw kinase inhibitors, ma'am. And probably this is going to be a non-labeled indication, or maybe just the experience of
No,
few doctors.
it is very much, it's a published literature. What I'm quoting is a published literature in 2000. This became from 2014, it's been used in Japan. And this study was there in 2018 and 19. These 3-4 studies, very interesting, elegant studies where they have cultured human tendon fibroblasts from patients who were undergoing strabismus surgery. And then they have used they checked the effects of rho kinase drops on the
Okay.
HTFs. But this experimental study and this one clinical study in which they predicted the response of the trabeculectomy, that's a clinical human study. But we want to take it up further in Indian eyes because ethnicity has a role. These studies were mostly in Japanese patients.
Yes, yes.
So we would like to do it in Indian eyes because ethnicity has a big role in the response of the conjunctiva to healing.
Hello, ma'am. This is from Sadanand. How good? Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. How good is the method of suturing conjunctiva around 2 mm from limbus versus at the limbus?
Okay, Dr. Sadanand, I would just request you, where was this? When I told you how to prevent the pleb leak, the CME, if you can go through the CME, it will give you all the answers. Okay, I have shown in this booklet, this is online available. I have given you the steps of how to do a conjunctival anchoring suture, and what he asked is this 2 millimeters. If you can see this, is it visible? So 2 mm away is not required. 1.5 millimeters away and 1 millimeter in the cornea. These anchoring sutures of the horizontal mattress sutures are sufficient. If you give a very close, like 0.5, 0.5, it will not take the tension of a bleb, because please remember, in the post-op period, this aqueous is going to come in this area, and this bleb is going to become heavy. So these sutures have to withstand the stress of this heavy bleb. So you can't have 0.5 mm and 0.5 mm. You have to have minimum 1.5. 2 mm will be too big because it will cause too much of an astigmatism. Because if you give too much in the cornea, you will induce much more corneal astigmatism. Therefore, 1.5 to 1.5 here and 1 mm here, in the cornea, and 1.5 in the conjunctiva is sufficient. You don't need more than that. Okay, if you can see that, it's very clearly visible. Can you see that? So it was from here 1 mm and 1.5 here, and this is how I do my conjunctival suturing. I used to do with the new technique which we have perfected, the frill incision. We call it the Singh's frill incision. In that, you don't need to do any of these. And that incision is so good. It doesn't cause any. It causes very minimal, not any. It causes very minimal astigmatism, and it is so comfortable to the patient. So we don't do this incision anymore. This is one of my older videos which I'm showing you, and we've shifted to the conjunctival frill incision now.
Ma'am, Nilay Majumdar has asked, any experience of managing bleps with Ologen?
Yes, definitely. I have published my largest, longest follow-up, I think 9-year follow-up in IGO last year on the Ologen. I have used Ologen and amniotic membrane both as an antifibrotic agent because I don't really like mitomycin too much, because mitomycin is unphysiological. So amniotic membrane is physiological, and Ologen is not damaging. So a lot of my patients, I've used Ologen, who can afford it, because it's not that economical as amniotic membrane or as mitomycin C. But I have had the longest follow-up of Ologen, I think, in the country is mine. It's been published in IGO, if you can look it up.
Dr. Sheetal Krishnapuria has asked, what should be used for conjunctival sutures, 10-0 nylon or 8-0 Vicryl?
Okay. See, in children, where I had to, in children, initially I tried atovicryl because I didn't want to do a second EUA and I burnt my hands. Okay. Atovicryl will, the tensile strength within few weeks. The faster the healing, the more rapid. So within 2 weeks, the tensile strength goes away and there is a chance of gleb leak. So for me, atovicryl, a strict no-no. I only use ato nylon, and ato nylon, monofilament nylon for my fill incision. If I'm doing a limber space flap, which I used to do, again I would use an ato. If I'm doing a fornix space flap, okay, then I would do a nino nylon, because I'm taking a corneal bite also, and taking a corneal bite with ato is little bit damaging the cornea much more. So I prefer a nino if I'm doing a fornix space flap. But otherwise, the technique which we are doing conjunctival fill incision now, we use a ato nylon, never vicryl.
I think that's it, ma'am. Many of our doctors, audiences, they have thanked you, madam, for an excellent and then very informative presentation. And
My pleasure.
I think we are done with the question answer sessions. Hope there are no further questions from our viewers. And I thank you, ma'am, very much for an exhaustive and a very informative presentations, which you have showed the videos of the live case surgeries, which was very interesting rather than just putting the data and all. So,
no, and actually, that's what I wanted to share with my peers and some of my students, is that trabeculectomy. Please remember, a glaucoma patient is your patient for a lifetime. Whether that patient is on anti-glaucoma medications or on laser therapy or surgery, this patient is yours for lifetime, unless you misbehave with the patient so badly that he goes away. Because this surgery is going to have these ups and downs, and you would require all these modulations in your management as and when the trab bleb ages. Okay, it ages, it evolves. Okay, so you need to follow up these patients of trabeculectomy, and the most important thing when you do a trab surgery is you take a consent from the patient that vision will not improve, suturing will be done, and this patient needs a lifetime follow-up. And when you tell these patients this, and then these patients are much more comfortable. So trab journey is definitely more tortuous than a cataract journey.
And before we end, there is one more question. Yeah, Dr. Tamanash has asked, what's your take on pre-op subconjunctival MMC before trabeculectomy?
Yes, in fact, very recently I have started doing that. One of my thesis is happening in which I'm giving subconj MMC 10 minutes before. Okay, and I just inject, and it's technically pretty easy to do, because I don't have to put the platelets of mirror cells of collagen spheres soaked into mitomycin and then dispose them. So it's technically much easier to do injection pre-op, and I have been doing it. The only issue I have with that is that if you inject a little bit too much,
it's not muted,
can have a avascular bleb. So the trick in that I realized is that you do not go beyond 0.1 to 0.15 ml. You massage it thoroughly, and you do not leave it in the eye for 30 minutes, as people say. When I take the patient in for surgery, when I'm cleaning and draping, I inject the mitomycin, and then till I'm doing the bridal suture and other things, in that 2-3 minutes, I would wash it out. I don't leave it for too long.
Again, an extension of the same topic, Dr. Tamanosh, again he has asked, your take on preoperative subconjunctival MMC injection before trab instead of MMC sponges?
Yeah. You inject it in the subconj space before you touch the conjunctival. Normally I do a bridal suture technique. I don't do a corneal traction suture. So before I touch the superior rectus, I inject the mitomycin. And I do not inject it at 12 o'clock directly. I inject it from the temporal side and I massage it with the cotton spear throughout till the nasal side. So I gently massage it and then I start my conjunctival incision.
Ma'am, again he has asked what is the dose you follow. I think you have answered that.
Yeah, the mitomycin, normally you have 0.2 milligram percent in the subconj in the when you are applying it with the mirror cell sponges. In this, I half the dose.
I think, ma'am, we are done with our question answer session. It was a wonderful talk. The way you have taken us to the live surgeries and all, it was really a very unique session, I can say, because we are used to see the presentation, not so much of live surgeries in the talk. So thank you so much for these, and wonderfully you have prepared the slides and all. And ma'am, the way the question answer session was handled was also excellent. And I'm trying to stop this session, but the questions are flowing. Kindly excuse me if I can
No
ask you
problem.
one more
Let
question.
it flow. Let it flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Sheetal, she has asked, do you stop PG analogs before taking the patient for trabeculectomy?
Okay, Sheetal, that's a very important question. However, there are two schools of thoughts to that. I stop PG analogs at least 2 weeks before. Having said that, in any drug trial, if you see, the washout period for PG is 4 weeks. So to be truly PG free, you need the conjunctiva not to have any drops of prostaglandins for at least 4 weeks, which may not be logistically feasible. Practicality won't is possible. It may not be possible to keep the patient off drops for 1 month because we need to substitute some other drops. So I do a golden mean in that I withdraw the PG analogs for 2 weeks. However, many centers do not stop the PG analogs. They do not believe in it. I do believe in it because PGs are pro-inflammatory, and I do a lot of angle closure glaucomas in which I have a very shallow fornix and the conjunctiva is very friable. So I do stop the PG analogs 2 weeks before surgery, not 4 weeks as is ideal, but 2 weeks before. Some people do not stop at all.
Yes, ma'am. Finally, I think we have done with the question and answer sessions. Once again, thank you so much for your elaborate presentation and all. I thank all the audiences, the doctors who have logged in, and then probably it was a very learning experience for all of them, I assure. And I thank all my team in the HO, that's in the PMT team, and all my field colleagues who have really worked a lot for these type of webinars. Without them, the program would never happen successfully. I thank everybody for this, and thank you very much again, ma'am, you and your team, for an excellent talk.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.